I'd go back to what I've said in the past. Like our mindset, going into the draft, with our most valuable asset, isn't about, hey, just trade it away or trade it. It's maximizing the asset, and that can at different times take different forms. It can be selecting a player, it could be trading it for a veteran, it could be trading down. I'd say this, Scott, every year is unique because the players change, your pick location change, demand, may change. So so the general answer to your question is yes, the dynamics are different. But even if we were picking 2 again this year, I'd give you the same answer.
Browns GM Andrew Berry talks about trading down in the 2026 NFL Draft, and the more he talks about it, the more it feels like Cleveland is preparing everybody for something big. Not confirming it, not promising it, but absolutely preparing the ground for it. Because when a general manager keeps repeating phrases like maximize the asset, different scenarios, and long-term investment, that is not accidental language. That is a front office telling you, without fully telling you, that the 6th pick is not locked in to one player, one position, or even one direction. And that is exactly why this thing has become so interesting.
I think probably the change was when we made our strategic pivot to get younger, right? At that point, you're going to make sure that younger players have the opportunity to kind of play their way into development. And I think kind of where we are now, I think it'll be a similar mindset. That maybe changes a little bit as we have a more veteran and established team. But we obviously want to give guys runway to grow.
Here's the part nobody is talking about. Andrew Berry never speaks like a guy who is emotionally attached to a draft slot. He speaks like a guy looking at the board as a business problem. That stood out immediately. He did not say, "We love being at 6." He did not say, "We are excited to add a receiver." He did not say, "We need offensive line help." He said the goal is to maximize the asset, and that can mean taking a player, trading for a veteran, trading up, or trading down. That is a massive clue, because it tells you the Browns are not entering this draft with tunnel vision. They are entering it like a front office that wants options all the way until it is on the clock. And that matters because Browns fans have spent weeks arguing about need: wide receiver, tackle, defensive line, maybe even running back if you want to get crazy. But Berry basically pushed back on that whole conversation. He almost sounded annoyed by the public obsession with drafting for need. His point was that these picks are long-term investments, not just patches for today's roster. That is a huge difference, because if you really believe that, then the Browns are not just asking who can help in September. They are asking who can become a quality starter, a difference maker, maybe even a unique piece for years.
You select a unique player over a preference, was what he said. That's what
Difference maker, unique player, elite talent. That doesn't scream, boy, do we need a wide receiver.
That what he had said. Now, I don't know if he's trying to send us down the wrong road, but
Which, quite possible.
Best available player. That was what I got out of the whole thing.
This is where it gets dangerous, because when a GM starts using words like difference maker, elite talent, and unique player, it can mean 2 things. One, he is genuinely laying out his philosophy and telling you they are going best player available, or 2, he is throwing just enough smoke into the room to make teams behind him nervous. Because if you are Washington sitting right behind Cleveland and you hear Andrew Berry talking about unique talent and special players, you might start thinking, wait a minute, are they actually going to take the guy we want? Are they setting us up? Are they serious about staying at 6? That is why Jeremiah Love came through that press conference like a neon sign. Berry did not just mention him casually, he talked about him like a special weapon. He compared that type of player to Christian McCaffrey and Jahmyr Gibbs, and that is not small praise. You do not throw out those names unless you want people to understand how explosive and dynamic you think a prospect can be. He basically described Love as the kind of player who can transcend scheme, the kind of guy you have to find ways to use because he is that gifted. And the second he did that, the whole room shifted. Because now the question is obvious. Does Barry actually love Jeremiah Love that much, or is he trying to make somebody else believe he does?
But players that transcend scheme, you have to find a way to use those players. His talk on Jeremiah Love made you think they're either really, really open to it, or man, is he trying to sell it? And as you just said, that if somebody wants Jeremiah Love, then they need to make a phone call.
Here's the part nobody is talking about. Both things can be true. He can absolutely think Jeremiah Love is special and also know that saying it out loud has value. That is what makes this so smart. Barry was careful. He did not promise anything, he did not overplay it, but he made sure everybody heard how he sees rare talent. And if another team is sitting there thinking about making a move for a player like that, now Barry has helped increase the tension. He has basically said, hey, don't assume we're passing. That alone can help create a market for the 6th pick. And that is where the entire press conference became a draft strategy clinic if you were paying attention. Barry kept coming back to the same idea. Every year is different, the players are different, your position in the draft is different, demand changes. Translation, do not use last year's logic on this year's board. Last year, people assumed Cleveland wouldn't trade down, and they did. This year, everybody assumes they will, and Barry made a point to laugh at that. That was not random either. That was him reminding everybody that the Browns are not going to be pushed into acting predictably just because the media has decided what makes sense.
I want to know, I mean, if Todd tells you I'm not going to be able to work with this guy or I don't think it's going to work, and you draft him anyway, you know you're asking for problems. You're asking for headaches. So you better, I mean, there's got to be a level of tolerance when you draft somebody knowing what the head coach, because, and if you're going to draft somebody at 6, you better believe they met the head coach before. You're not drafting somebody out of the blue.
Well, sure.
This is where young players usually make a mistake, and honestly, fan bases do it too. They lock on to one position and treat the draft like a grocery list. Need a receiver? Draft a receiver. Need a tackle? Draft a tackle. But Barry basically said that's not how serious teams operate. Every team has needs. That's not enough to decide a premium pick. When you draft this high, you're supposed to be chasing players who are hard to find and hard to acquire. Unique players, elite talent, difference makers. That was probably the most revealing part of the whole thing, because it tells you the Browns don't want to use the 6th pick on someone they merely like. They want someone they believe changes the profile of the roster. And that is why a lot of people came away from Barry's comments thinking offensive line might not be the move at 6. Not because the Browns don't need help there, they clearly do, but because Barry's tone around elite talent and uniqueness didn't sound like a man dying to force an offensive lineman into that slot. He even talked about how tackles are tackles depending on scheme and fit. And that made it sound like the Browns think they can find offensive line help later without using the premium pick there. That doesn't eliminate the position, but it definitely made it feel less urgent compared to a special playmaker.
Andrew Berry, who had mostly failed in the draft before last year, had a very successful draft. I don't know if you want to call it an A+, I don't know, I wouldn't go that far, because they didn't get impact players. At this point, certainly if Shedeur Sanders does become a starter, then it's an A+. You know, not just a starter, but a good starter. It becomes an A+ draft.
At the same time, Barry was also careful not to overcommit to wide receiver, and that was another clue. He was asked about Carnell Tate and Jordan Tyson, and he praised both. Tate for being acrobatic and having that circus catch body control, Tyson for creating with the ball in his hands. But he didn't sound like a man pounding the table for receiver at 6. He sounded measured, respectful, interested, but not all in. He even pushed back on overanalyzing the Ohio State receiver situation, pointing out that great wideouts have come out of crowded receiver rooms before. So yes, the Browns clearly like those players, but did Barry make it sound like receiver is the unavoidable pick? Not really. This is where it gets dangerous, because the more Barry talks, the more it sounds like the Browns want the league to believe they are comfortable doing almost anything. Trading down, trading up, staying put, taking a receiver, taking a back, taking a defender. And that kind of uncertainty is powerful if you are sitting at 6, because if the teams behind you don't know what you're doing, they can't relax, they can't assume their guy will fall, they can't safely wait, and that is exactly how you create calls. That is exactly how you build leverage.
Burry even admitted they studied the pros and cons of moving around the board. Trading down, trading up, expected value in each range, odds of landing starters, odds of landing role players. That matters, because it tells you this is not just instinct with Cleveland. This is modeled, calculated. They are not walking into Thursday night hoping a good idea hits them in the moment. They have looked at this from every angle. So when Burry says they are working through a number of scenarios up until they get on the clock, believe him. That is not generic front office talk. That is probably the truest thing he said. And one of the smartest answers he gave was on future draft classes, especially at quarterback. He basically said the Browns always keep visibility on next year's class and even the year after that. But he also made it clear there is a lot of noise in those projections. That was a subtle but important shot at the whole just wait until next year mindset. Burry does not buy that as some kind of automatic truth. He knows how much changes. Guys rise, guys fall, guys get hurt, guys stay in school, guys emerge out of nowhere. So while the Browns absolutely think ahead, they are not going to sacrifice this year's decision based on some fantasy about how perfect next year might be. Here's the part nobody is talking about. That answer also tells you the Browns are not afraid to act now if they think the right player is there. Too many teams get trapped in future obsession. Burry's tone was different. Yes, know the future. Yes, account for it. But do not let it control you with fake certainty. That makes me think the Browns are not entering this draft trying to survive it until some better class arrives. They are looking for real talent now, which again circles back to his favorite words: quality starter, difference maker, elite talent, unique player. And if you listen carefully, that is what made Jeremiah Love feel so central to this whole thing. Not because Burry said they are taking him, he absolutely did not, but because the way he described him fit the philosophy he spent the whole press conference building. Dynamic, special, unique, a player who can do a lot of different things, a hard-to-find skill set. That is exactly the kind of prospect Burry sounded most excited about in theory. So even if Cleveland never plans to take Love, it makes perfect sense that his name now hovers over pick 6 like a threat, because he is the cleanest example of the kind of player Burry kept describing. Of course, there is another possibility. Maybe Burry was not selling a smokescreen at all. Maybe he was telling the truth in the most direct way he could without showing his hand. Maybe the Browns really do see this pick as a chance to grab the best player on their board regardless of position. Maybe if the unique talent is a back, they take the back. Maybe if it is a defender, they take the defender. Maybe they trust themselves to address receiver or tackle later. That is the scary part for fans who want certainty. Burry did not give any. He gave philosophy instead. And honestly, that might be the biggest takeaway of all. Browns fans keep wanting the draft to feel simple, but Burry's comments made it sound anything but simple. This is not, we need X, so we'll take X. This is, we need to maximize the 6th pick in the way that most improves the long-term future of the franchise. That is a more disciplined way to think, but it is also more frustrating if you are trying to guess what happens, because it means almost every path is still open. That includes trading down, obviously, and Burry's language there was classic. He did not close the door. He did not run from the idea. He acknowledged that the dynamics are different at 6 than at 2, that every year is unique, and that multiple scenarios are on the table. That's as close as a GM gets to telling you he's listening. Not desperate, not committed, listening. And if another front office believes Cleveland might actually take their target, that listening becomes valuable very fast. So, what does all of this really mean? It means Andrew Burry is trying to make sure the Browns control the room before the draft even starts. He wants teams behind Cleveland to wonder if they need to move. He wants fans to stop assuming this is about need. He wants everyone to understand that the 6th pick is not just a selection, it's an asset. And if he can create enough uncertainty around who the Browns like, then maybe somebody blinks, maybe somebody calls, maybe somebody pays. That's why this press conference mattered more than the usual draft week GM talk. Burry was not rambling. He was building a case for flexibility, a case for best player available, a case for patience, a case for leverage. And buried inside all that was the real warning.
Cleveland is not locked into your mock draft, not your receiver, not your tackle, not your favorite team's plan. They're going to do what they think gives them the best long-term return, whether that means staying at 6, moving down, or shocking people entirely. And that's what makes this draft fascinating for the Browns. Because if Burry is telling the truth, then the 6th pick is still alive in every possible direction. If he's playing games, then he is doing it to make somebody behind him uncomfortable. Either way, it means Cleveland has made one thing clear. They don't intend to be boxed in. So now the question is not just whether the Browns trade down. The real question is whether Andrew Burry has already done enough talking to make another team come up and force the issue. And if that happens, Browns fans are going to find out very quickly whether all this talk about maximizing the asset was a smokescreen or the plan all along.